This is one of the most destructive things from this era of Democrat leadership. They were more concerned about power here in the United States than making sure that the United States remained the #1 economic and military power on the globe. The Chinese made great gains under Democrat leadership, buying farmland in the United States, buying land next to key military installations in the United States. This is what was happening under the Democrat Party.
That's Florida Congressman Byron Donalds, a key member of the House Oversight Committee on the gains that Communist China made during the Biden administration as Democrats were fixated on President Trump. This week, the House Oversight Committee is set to continue its investigation into Joe Biden's mental fitness during his presidency, when former White House Deputy Assistant Andrew Bates sits down for an interview on Friday. Former White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre and former White House Chief of Staff Jeff Zients are also slated to appear before the committee in coming weeks. Joining me now with more on his investigation into former President Biden is the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman James Comer. It's great to have you with us this morning. Welcome. I want to get the latest on the investigation, Congressman, but also what we've heard so far. Key figures taking the fifth. Key figures that day after day said that Biden was totally fit and ready to do the job, now saying they really didn't spend that much time with him. The testimony doesn't add up with what we saw. Something is awry here.
Yeah, something's definitely awry. Look, when you have Ian Sams, who was the face of the White House response to the very damaging report that said that Joe Biden was a forgetful old man. He was the face of the White House response to our investigation, Byron Donalds and myself, as well as all the members of the House Oversight Committee, when we found that China had, in fact, wired money to LLCs owned by Biden family members. He was the one that would always respond and say he talked to Joe Biden. Joe Biden was vibrant. Joe Biden did not do this. The family's innocent. And then come to find out when we put him under oath, he admits, well, I only saw Joe Biden 2 times over a 2-year period. That's unprecedented. We're trying to get to the bottom of who was operating the autopen, and we've brought in a dozen people so far, and they're all pointing the fingers at other people. The ones that I think may have a little more knowledge, they pled the fifth to avoid self-incrimination. So I think what you're going to see is unless Jean-Pierre and some of these others come in and tell us more, it's becoming very apparent that Joe Biden really wasn't the one in command at the end of his presidency. And that's important because you're talking about thousands of pardons and dozens of executive orders that were signed with that autopen, and it appears without President Biden's knowledge.
Absolutely. I want to move to this. 10 FBI whistleblowers, they warned of political weaponization, and they also say that they faced retaliation from the Biden administration. We've been talking about this weaponization as a theme. It touches so many different aspects of what we've discussed just this morning alone. But it also shows you that it's not just the president who has faced this. It flows into all different levels and to everyday people that are just trying to serve and do their duties.
Yeah, well, look, the government is comprised of an overwhelming number of liberals, an overwhelming number of activists. During the Obama and Biden years, the government numbers swelled of liberal activists that came in, whether they worked for the EPA or whether they worked for the Department of Justice or the FBI. They had an agenda. They weren't necessarily public servants. The ones that rose to the top were activists, and these activists tried to weaponize the federal government in various forms, whether to enact policy or whether to ruin the lives of people or influence elections, as we've seen. So now we have people in place like Tulsi Gabbard and John Radcliffe and Kash Patel who are exposing this. Congress has exposed this. The House Oversight Committee has exposed it. The Judiciary Committee under Jim Jordan has exposed it. Now we need accountability. And I'm hopeful that Pam Bondi will take this evidence and her Department of Justice will start holding people accountable. And we're seeing President Trump be more active on Truth Social, encouraging encouraging his own Department of Justice to hold people accountable for wrongdoing, and I think it's going to happen.
And the weaponization is really interesting because in some ways it serves as a distraction. Look over here, so you're not really focusing on what was over here. Many Americans want to know what went on with Special Counsel Jack Smith going after the president. They want to know about Jim Comey and John Brennan and Russiagate and where the accountability is in those instances.
I completely agree. As I travel Kentucky as well as all across America, that's the biggest question I get from people. When are people going to be held accountable for this wrongdoing? The investigations are complete. More and more evidence is surfacing. One of the limiting factors we had, whether it was Jim Jordan's weaponization subcommittee or my House Oversight Committee, was the fact that the Biden administration wouldn't turn over documents. Now we've got Trump administration officials like Kash Patel and like John Ratcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard who are making public these documents. So I think the case now for the Department of Justice, Trump's Department of Justice, Pam Bondi's Department of Justice, is now there to hold these people accountable. And I think you're seeing more hints from President Trump that the day of accountability is near, and hopefully this is going to set an example for future people in the government, never to let this deep state rise again and to try to weaponize the government to punish your enemies or to enact liberal legislative agendas like the Green New Deal.
On Tuesday, sir, House members are going to meet with Epstein victims. How is that going to play into how the Department of Justice is handling this, as Americans have said they want to see the files?
Right. And I want to commend the Department of Justice. Pam Bondi's has started turning over those documents to the House Oversight Committee. I subpoenaed those documents. The Trump administration is cooperating with us. We're bringing in the families and the attorneys of the victims Tuesday afternoon to talk to the House Oversight Committee. This will be Republicans and Democrats because we're going to make this information public. That's what the American people want. When we travel around all of our districts, that's one of the things that people ask. When are we going to see the Epstein files? But it's very complicated because there are victims of the Epstein files, and we want to listen to those victims and their families and their attorneys to see how best can we present this information. Do they want their names redacted? Right. Do they not want their names redacted? And that's one of the things that President Trump's talked about. Like, this is a lot more complicated than a lot of people want to realize. There are victims that are involved here, and we want to protect their futures and their reputations and their families. So we're going to have a good conversation to see how best then to turn around and present this information to the American people and hopefully put this issue to rest so Congress can focus on passing a spending bill and working with President Trump to reduce crime in our big cities.
Fair point. And there's a lot left to do. House Oversight Committee Chairman, Congressman James Comer, Thank you so much for being here.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.